Good evening. Welcome to the national headquarters of the Theosophical Society in America. Are there any people here for the first time? Especially welcome. And of course, to the people who come more often. We're always happy to see people coming to the Theosophical Society for the programs that we offer here. My name is John Chianchosi. I'm the Director of Public Programs. So I organize these types of programs here. And I have a duty to ask that you, at this time, silence your cell phones and other noise-making electronic devices. It's working, okay. Didn't sound very loud. Especially for the people who are here for the first time, the Theosophical Society in America promotes study, meditation, and service. We encourage open-minded inquiry into the world religions, philosophy, science, and the arts. And we have a deep respect for the unity of all life. Our goal is to help people explore the spiritual path so as to arrive at a deeper understanding regarding the wisdom of the ages. Furthermore, we believe that this wisdom is not limited to any one tradition, and thus we offer programs from all traditions. I do invite you to pick up one of our program catalogs in which you'll find all the programs being offered during the coming months of February and March. The new program catalog for spring-summer will be coming out in a couple of months. These programs are also listed on our website, and there you can register for those that are of special interest to you. The Theosophical Society is a membership organization, and one of the benefits of being a member is that you can attend all our Thursday evening lectures free of charge. And we have a lot of lectures during the year, so you actually save money if you come to quite a few of them. However, what we offer here, our programs as well as our resources, are open to the public at large, and always everyone is welcome, regardless of whether one is a member or not. Now this evening, I am very pleased to be able to introduce a friend and someone who has been a friend of the Theosophical Society for a very long time. Longer than I have, I think. So Vincent Pitisci is probably known to some of you. He is a lifelong student of metaphysics and mysticism. And he has actually been associated with the Theosophical Society since the 1950s. I was in Italy at that time. I don't know how you got to be here. He teaches and lectures throughout the Greater Chicago. He is the author of Genius of the Tarot, A Guide to Divination with the Tarot, and The Essential Tarot, Unlocking the Mystery. As a professional psychic and tarot advisor, Vince conducts phone readings not only nationally but also internationally. So we are pleased that he is here this evening, and he is going to speak on the art of tarot divination. Please join me in welcoming Vincent Pitisci.
That was nice. Hello, everybody. A lot of faces here. That's good. That's good. I wanted to say that now for the first time in its history, the centuries-old mystery of why the tarot works can now be explained, and that's a breakthrough. That's huge because it's not. It's always been something that nobody could ever really say why it worked before. And I'm not talking about a gray theory that I have or something like that. I'm talking about with conclusive facts now, this can be explained. My work on this is the first of its kind, but I'm sure others will follow. So we're on the ground floor with this right now. But that's always been the piece of the puzzle that's been missing, is why does it work? And it's kind of hard to learn something if you're trying to study this tarot if you don't understand why it works. So this is going to open up doors of understanding in ways that we never had before. Pappas wrote Tarot of the Bohemians in 1880s. And in that book, right in his preface, he starts out, second paragraph, he says, its application and construction has not yet been revealed so far as I know. And then he goes on to write about 300 pages of precise instruction about tarot cards, which is kind of hard to do if you don't know the application and construction of what you're writing about. Eden Gray wrote The Complete Guide to the Tarot in 1970. She used the reissued Rider-Waite deck, which just came out that year too. And that book was a no-nonsense, clearly written book on how to read tarot cards. And I think that book is really the reason the Rider deck became so popular, because it just came out again, and it was a clearly written book on how to read tarot cards. And in that book, in her chapter 5, How to Read the Cards, she says, for some reason that we don't yet understand, your subconscious mind shuffles the cards but only does this after you've learned them completely. So another thing, like it's just gray talk about something you can't really confirm in any way. And that's always been the problem. And you can't improve something if you can't explain it. So we haven't been able to improve anything with the tarot application because we never really knew how it worked to begin with. So we've been forced to use paint-by-numbers applications with the tarot cards and tarot card template or tarot card spread templates, stuff that was already in place and we couldn't really do anything with because we didn't know what we were doing. Authors write, we don't know why it works, but if you do this, 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 and this exactly this way, you get good results, and that's all you need to know. And that's what we've been forced to do, paint-by-numbers applications. So what do we do when we do a card reading? We have a question we don't have an answer for. We apply a tarot card reading. We find new insight, new ideas, new answers. And if we move forward on these ideas, and they work, that's an accurate prediction. And what do we do when we have that? We look at these cards and we say, how can a deck of cards do this? We keep looking at these cards. We look at them under a microscope because we don't know the application. We don't know what else to do. All we got is the cards to look at. And we've really done a lot with that. We've sort of overdone it, I think. The mystery of the tarot has never been in the cards. It's been in the application. A lot of people don't know the difference between a strategy and a tactic. There's really no reason to know it. Most of the time, you don't really need to know that. But if I'm going to build a house, a blueprint of that house would be a map of my strategy. And the hammers and saws and other tools I use to build the house would be considered tactics. The good rule of thumb is a tactic you can touch, and a strategy you don't even see unless you make a map of it. The tarot has tactics and strategies too, and you can look at it the same way. The card spread is a strategy, and you never see it. You only see the cards that are laid into it. These are some home movies I just brought with me. Let me get to this here. The card spread. This is the Celtic Cross card spread. You never see this on your table. You only see the cards that are laid into it. You don't see this. This is the strategy of your reading. Each numbered position in this card spread is an aspect of your question. It's like your question broken apart into chapters. And we look into each particular aspect of the question. Tarot cards are laid into those positions to spark ideas for answers to these positions. That's how it works. And most people don't realize that this is your question broken apart, and these are the answers to that question. So this has a lot to do with it, and it's not really talked about much. But this is very important. This is the strategy of your reading. So when we lay tarot cards into these positions, if I have position 3, or let's say position 5 on my Celtic cross is an asset the client has that they should use to try to achieve what they're looking into. This tarot card that's laid into that position is there to spark ideas as far as what kind of things that they have going for them and what they can do here. So I'm forced to use my imagination now to take this random tarot card and make it make sense with position 5 as an asset to something the client has going for them that they can use. Whatever that card happens to be, it's a random stimulus of some type that's supposed to spark imagination for me and intuition to come up with ideas that would be useful for the client to know. That's what we're doing with a card spread. And that's what we're doing with tarot cards. Random tarot cards are placed into these positions, forcing the reader to make associations between the position's meaning and the tarot card in relation to the client's question. This is what we're doing with a card spread. This is important, and a lot of people don't really see it or think about it that much. You can get a lot of books on the tarot. You might have 350 pages on the tarot. 10 of them will be about this. And 300 of them are going to be about the cards. When we're talking about the cards, like I said, we look at them under a microscope. And because we're so fascinated, we say, how can a deck of cards do this? Really what you're doing there is it's like I built that house, and after the house is done, I look at my hammer and saw and say, how did these tools build this house? It's the same thing. We're looking too much into the tactic and not the card, and not the spread itself. The spread is the strategy of the whole thing. If I change these positions' meanings to be something that's, if I use position meanings that are beneficial to that client, I'm going to have useful answers from these cards that I lay into those positions. That's what a card spread does. Today, this would be known as an intentional application of thought, used to spark ideas for me to find answers for you and your questions. A random stimulus in the form of tarot cards placed into those positions forced me to make associations between the card and the position's meaning in relation to your question we're looking into. This forces me to use my imagination, and imagination is the gateway to your intuition, using the same side of the mind. If I use what I know, I'm using my logic and reason to find answers. If I'm forced to use my imagination and intuition, I'm using a different side of the mind now where I can find new ideas. Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. With our knowledge, we can't find anything new. That's already known, the knowledge. That's stuff we know already. If you want to find something new, you have to have imagination. So this is how a card spread works. And that's the diagram of a card spread. One of many. Whatever the positions are really isn't important. The horseshoe spread, the Celtic cross, gypsy spread, it makes no difference. The pattern on the table, what's really important is what these positions mean as far as the person's question goes. I could lay this out in a different pattern. It doesn't make any difference. What position 6 is, what does that mean to this person as far as the question goes? That's what's important. Or position 5, position 7. What do these positions mean? They're just questions. And the tarot is like an idea generator. It just sparks ideas to make that we didn't see before. The mindset of a tarot reading is, the mindset of the tarot cards is so strong, it's centuries old, of this mysterious deck of cards that has this unexplainable power to it that can predict the future. And it's a very strong illusion. But if you were to erase all of that and erase the history of the tarot, and the tarot came out today, brand new, never came out before, just today, this wouldn't be seen as anything that big of a deal at all. If you went to your friends and say, hey, you see these new things called the tarot cards, it's really kind of neat. You lay out questions, you find answers for them. You're going to have people say, oh yeah, I took that in college. That's a creative thinking technique. That's called conceptual blending, what you're doing there. This is identical to what's being done in science, in medicine, in technology, in the arts. All of your Fortune 500 companies, branches of our government like NASA, the Pentagon, they all use the same exact application of thought that we're using right here. It's identical. The only difference is they don't force themselves to use tarot cards for a random stimulus to find answers. There's people in place right now, you could take college courses on this, the same application. There's people who make a living right now called creative consultants who will be working for those things I just mentioned, Fortune 500 companies and medicine and pharmaceuticals and huge projects. And they're doing exactly the same thing the tarot reader's doing. The only difference is the tarot reader limits their random stimulus to a deck of 78 cards called the tarot to be placed in elements of a question, segments of the question we're looking into. Where the creative consultant will use anything in the world for a random stimulus. And things found in this room, things found in the hardware store, doesn't make any difference. Anything in the world can be used. This would be something maybe a think tank would be looking into. It's the same thing. It's your question broken apart, information, the feelings we have about it, positive aspects, negative aspects, creative ideas and conclusions. It's just your question broken apart. And if you have a question, if you have a section of your question where you're stuck for an answer, you can't use what you've learned because that's why you're stuck. There's nothing there. It's going to keep looping in your head, dead end, dead end, dead end. You have to use your imagination to find an idea. And that's done by adding something totally random to that element of the question, forcing you to make associations between this total randomness that has nothing at all to do with my question and that aspect of my question itself. Anything that's ever been invented was done by taking something we're totally familiar with and adding it to an element of our question that we're trying to find answers to. I brought this as an example. Christmas, we just had these hanging around. And I said, this would be a good example. Louis Braille. Louis Braille was a young boy, and he became blind because of illness of some type. I think it was rheumatic fever. And so now he's blind. He's in the backyard. His father's working in the yard, and he's sitting under a tree, and he's wishing he could read a book again. And as he's sitting there thinking about it, he's feeling around the ground, and he picks up a pine cone. And he's touching the points on the pine cone. He thought, well, what if they put points on paper in certain formations that would represent letters of the alphabet, and we could touch words instead of reading them with our eyes. This is a random stimulus that came up with a new idea called Braille. by Braille. This is how our mind naturally works anyway. Now we have intentional applications that do exactly that same thing. And we know that that works. Here's the Hubble telescope example. I mentioned this briefly last time I was here, just for a second. Let's say this was a think tank, and you were all a bunch of rocket scientists, and we work for NASA. And we're here, this is the 90s now, and our project is the Hubble telescope. We're to launch a telescope into deep space, outside of the Earth's atmosphere, and to see what's out there. And I'm a creative consultant that's been hired to work with you to find ideas here. Now, if we look at all these, we look at the positions. We just have 4 positions here. I'm sure they had a lot more. This is probably a big whiteboard up here. And I would be up here and you'd be down there. We'd all be talking about this stuff. How are we going to navigate the telescope? How are we going to power it? How are we going to, the purpose of the thing. These 3 of these aspects we could figure out. We know how to navigate things in space. We know how to power stuff, nuclear power, solar power. There's different ways to do that. The purpose is obvious. We want to look into space. This one here, focus. I'm going to use this thing just because I got it. Oh, yeah, that's cool. I like that. Okay, focus. I can point this at you, too. How you doing? Okay. The Hubble telescope was almost trashed. They almost let it go. They couldn't figure out how they're going to focus this thing because a telescope focuses by extending and retracting its length. And you can't design something to focus light years away. You couldn't physically make that happen. They couldn't figure out how they're going to focus this thing. So they almost gave up on it. So let's say I'm a creative consultant. I'm working with you. We need a random stimulus for this. If I look at this logically, I'm going to look at microscopes. I'm going to look at binoculars, eyeglasses, camera lenses, things like that, which was, it's sort of the same trend there, sort of the same things in the mind. There's nothing there. It's just going to loop. So I have to find something that's going to really throw my imagination off, and we got to work with that. So I tell you all, I said, okay, focusing the Hubble telescope. Think of things you find in the bathroom that will help us focus the Hubble telescope. Now that's bizarre. So you got a shower curtain, you got a medicine cabinet, you got a sink. I got a shower head. What about the shower head? You can adjust and retract and open up the stream of water to a wide mist to a short direct flow. What if we used the principles of the shower head, and instead of flow of water, the flow of light coming through it and the depth of field? Would that work? The Hubble telescope became a success because they looked at a shower head. That's called conceptual blending today. That's an intentional application of thought because I said, think of things you find in the bathroom. Another one was the heat-seeking missile, air-to-air missile. Pentagon wanted a missile that a high-speed jet could hit another high-speed jet with. And so they had different categories, maybe kind of detonation, how they're going to power the missile, and how many they're going to carry, and whatever. One of them was how are they going to hit the target? And they couldn't figure out a way to do that. So a creative consultant would say, think of things you find in the desert that will help us aim a missile at another high-speed jet from one high-speed jet to another. And they came up with the Sidewinder rattlesnake, because the Sidewinder rattlesnake buries himself in the sand and waits for something to walk by, and it senses the body heat, then it springs out and attacks. Just feeling, senses, goes toward the heat. And the first heat-seeking, they came up with the first heat-seeking missile because of that. And it was called the Sidewinder for that reason. That's conceptual blending. How can a rattlesnake help an air-to-air missile hit a target? How can a pine cone help the blind read? How can a shower head help us see into deep space? Conceptual blending. I could go on and on with examples of this, but they're out there and you could read them yourself. This is how it works. But seeing we know how it works now, we have, like I said, intentional applications of thought in place to make us think this way when we want to. When you look at these two applications, you see that they're identical. The card reading, okay, the card reading and a creative thinking technique. And it's for the same reason. To find it. An idea is a prediction. So it's for the same reason. To find an idea of something to still be done in the future. I think we could make a telescope that will focus if we use the shower head. That's a prediction that worked. I think the blind could read if we put points on paper like a pine cone. That's a prediction. They did it and it worked. Any idea you have is really a prediction because you haven't done it yet. You all predicted you're coming here tonight. Look at how good you are. Nobody's sitting here right now thinking, how did I know I was going to be here? You know, just... So we've learned 90% of what we know about the mind we've learned in the last 50 years, maybe even less than that. I've been involved with the tarot for 50 years. This application hasn't moved because the tarot reading because we haven't understood what we're doing. But psychology and cognitive science has moved a lot. And now we could look at this stuff and say, this is what we're doing, this is why it works. There's no more mystery to it. The mystery is in the mind. That's still a mystery. I teach the tarot here. I'm doing a class next week. You all should come. The mind is everybody's mind works differently. And the hardest thing I have as far as a teacher, I don't want to teach you how to read like me. You'll never read like me. I want to teach you how to read like you. So I can tell you what I'm doing to give you a picture of how to do it yourself, but if you're going to chase your tail trying to read like me, you're going to spend your whole life thinking, boy, I wish I could read like Vince. I wish I could read like Vince. That's not what you want to do. You want to learn how to read like you. I could never read like any of you either. We all think differently. So the mind is where the mystery is. What, why, how, and when. A typical analyzing a question, breaking it apart into sections, adding a random tarot card to stimulate ideas, to force us to think about what is this real question we're looking into? Why do we want this in our life? How are we going to get it? And when do we act? The cards help us come up with original ideas instead of just using our logic. This is called a random stimulus. A tarot card added to our question sparks ideas, forces us to use our imagination and our intuition. Today, this is known as conceptual blending. You can Google that when you go home tonight, and you can start reading about it, and you'll connect the dots to what I'm talking about. Card spreads or card meanings of cards. My book, Essential Tarot, the black one, I mapped out each card like this for meaning. I also have a 3 or 4 sentence definition on each card too, just because that's what all traditional books do. A lot of sources will tell you to memorize a card each day for 78 days. The tarot is not a dictionary, so memorizing a card meaning isn't going to really help you much. I use keywords. And keywords drift into other words. So these are keywords for the Fool. All you need is one keyword, really, to drift off into One keyword can drift off to actually basically everything in the world if you just keep it drifting. If you could have this map just keep on going and going and going, actually it'll drift off to all the meanings. And they'll start drifting off into other cards' meanings. So they're all interconnected, all the tarot cards. The way keywords work and why they're so much better is if I tell you with 3 or 4 sentences that this card means this, then you're memorizing a meaning that I told you the card means. If I tell you that. But if I use keywords, let's say the 5 of Swords, and I tell you the 5 of Swords, the key word for that is change. It means something's changing. And if I were to tell all of you, if you have paper and pencil, I would tell all of you, write down 5 words that come to mind from the word change. And you all had to write down 5 words, or 5 things. It could be 2 or 3 word sentences or whatever. 5 things that come from the word change. And you all did that. We could compare all those notes, and I bet you a lot of them, most of it would be different from each person. Everybody's going to see it a little differently. I might have spare change. I might have change of heart. I might have alteration, moderation, transformation. You might have something else. You have something else. You have some. We're all going to think differently. But when you use keywords, you're seeing the cards through your eyes instead of mine. And that's the only way you really become a real reader, is when you're reading the cards through your own eyes. Instead of memorizing what I'm saying, you're figuring out from your own insight. Tarot has a lot of changes that, well, a lot of people are trying to do things with it over the years. I've seen so much change over the years because people are trying to find answers to what the cards are doing and trying to find a better mousetrap of things. When I first got involved with the tarot, there was just the Tarot of Marseille readily available. And so I was lucky because there wasn't any choices. Today you have so many different decks out there, you can't keep track of them. They've really done horrible things with some of them. You know, they have Native American tarot. I don't know how they got that. Native American tarot, they never got involved with the tarot. They have gummy bear tarot. Can you imagine doing a reading for somebody and somebody gives you $100 for a reading, they got a serious issue going on, you pull out a deck of gummy bear tarot cards? You say, cut the cards. Like, we got to get in touch with our inner gummy bear. You know. They have James Bond tarot, tarot of baseball, the tarot of the cat people, and then they have the more serious decks. And we've taken those decks and like I said, we've looked at them under a microscope. Tarot Marseille is so basic, and that's usually what I use. I just made a deck. It's the Tarot of Marseille. And to judge a deck of tarot cards when I first started coming around would be like judging a deck of playing cards. If you don't like them, that's too bad. That's all they are. You know, there's nothing more you're going to do about it. You don't like tarot cards, you don't like them. That's all there is to it. But we've looked so closely into the cards. Examples are the Empress of the Rider-Waite. She has 12 stars in her crown, and to represent the 12 signs of the zodiac. It doesn't make any difference. I use that deck. I never count those stars in her crown. I don't care how many stars she's got. If I use the Marseille deck, she doesn't have stars in her crown at all. If you use the Thoth deck, it's a different look. So each deck has a book with the deep symbolism of it in there for the card, and then you go to another deck, and they have the symbolism of that deck in this book, and you realize we're looking at things we don't even use. You could do when you realize that it's a conceptual blending, creative thinking technique, you could use a deck of postcards and do a reading. It's a tactic. It might not be as good of a tactic. Just like a car is a tactic to get here tonight. You could have used a bicycle. You could have got here, but it wouldn't be as good of a tactic tonight as an automobile would be because of the weather. But you get the job, you could have got the job done. So I mean, to really think it's that important to look into the symbolism, or to memorize meanings of cards, to have these positions, or when you do a card spread and you have this order. You can go any order you want to go. You could lay these cards in any order you want to lay them in. It doesn't make any difference. You could have just left to right. You could just have left to right 3 rows here, 9 cards, and then the 10th one at the bottom. It wouldn't make any difference. As long as you have purpose in those meanings is what's important. So this isn't really, I still use the Celtic cross because that's what I learned with. That's just out of habit, but it really makes no difference. You could also change these meanings, positions, because now you know what we're doing with it. It's a strategy. So if I want to, if numbers 1 and 2 positions on the Celtic cross are, this covers him and this crosses him, which is what the traditional meanings are, I don't like that. I don't care about that. So I changed all the meanings of my Celtic cross to things that I think are more important today. My card spread, I look into what, why, how, and when of a question. What is the real question? Why do you want this in your life? How are we going to get it? And when do you act? Do you act now, before opportunities are lost? Or do we act later in a more advantageous time for us to do something here and get some results? Those 4 aspects is what I look into. I use these 10 positions in relation to those 4 aspects. Numbers 1 and 2 position on my Celtic cross represent the question itself. Gives us an opportunity to look at the question closely, maybe rephrase the question, see if there's a different way of looking at it. Numbers 3 position, I like to look at what the client is currently going through right now, what efforts they're doing, what things that they're taking, actions they're taking. Number 4, and what they can do about it to change that. Number 4 position is what their immediate goal is, what they're trying to accomplish right now. The first thing is immediately I want to try to get this done, immediate goals. Number 5 position is an asset the client has that they should keep aware of, something they got going for them that they should use. Maybe they're not aware of that. Number 6 position is an opportunity coming in the future that they should watch for. Number 7 position I like to look at is position is how the client views their own question. This allows me to question the client's viewpoint of their own question. They might be looking at something really bad and thinking of it as a very good thing, or vice versa. Maybe there's something very good and they're thinking of it as a bad thing. This allows me to question the client's viewpoint of their own question. Number 8 position is when do we act? Act now, before opportunities are lost, or wait for a better time? Number 9 position is what's the purpose of this question? Why do you want this in your life? What's the big picture? And number 10 position I use as details. Find things to look for as you go through this. Now most people will use a card spread. They'll say number 10 position is the final outcome. I don't care what the card spread is. Be it a horseshoe spread, gypsy spread, any spread. The last card is usually final outcome. And that's all the client cares about is the final outcome. They don't care about all this other stuff. They want to know if I'm going to get the job, or I'm going to sell the house, am I going to have the baby, or am I going to get married? That's what they want to know, that final outcome card. That's all they care about. But really it doesn't work that way. It's not fate. It's a matter of looking at your options and what you can do. And that's the prediction. I predict if you do this, this is what's going to happen. I predict if you do this over here, that's what's going to happen. And that's how that works. I don't believe in fate. I believe in free will. If there is a fate, it's the cards we've been dealt. You could look at them that way. And free will would be how we played those cards, if you believe in it at all. Some people get caught up in the psychic part of the tarot reading. I said this sparks your imagination, forcing me to make associations between a random tarot card placed into an element of a question. In some way, whether I make an association metaphorically or what I'm seeing in the card or something, what I'm feeling from it, I'm going to make some connection there. I'm forcing myself to do that. Imagination is the side of the mind that your intuition comes from. So a tarot reading can spark intuition because you're using that side of the mind. And it's just like any other thing. You develop it, you get better at it, and you'll use it. You'll find yourself seeing those things more because you're using it. And that's what you're doing. There's no power to these cards. There's no psychic awareness that it's going to give you in the way people usually think about it. I'm not going to tell you winning lottery numbers. If I could do that, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I'd be on my yacht somewhere. But that's just a stereotype that I think gets associated with the cards. So I hope this throws a little clarity on things. The creative thinking technique of conceptual blending and a tarot reading have the same purpose, to find an idea of something we're going to do in the future. That's called the prediction. They're identical. The only difference is the tarot reader is way smaller scale things. It's more of a personal, one-on-one situation. It's like I said, selling a house, getting married, moving to Florida, where a creative consultant would be looking into the Hubble telescope, maybe some pharmaceutical companies trying to find a cure for leukemia with something, or artificial intelligence uses conceptual blending as it progresses forward and advancing with their progress with that study. So they're working on, creative consultants are using this application, this intentional application of thought on huge projects. If Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos was sitting in this room right now and I was talking to them about what a tarot card reading is, they'd be saying, oh yeah, I see what you're doing. I see what you're talking about there. They would know. And I said, again, like I said, a creative consultant will use anything in the world for a random stimulus, and a tarot reader limits their random stimulus to a deck of tarot cards. But it's a very effective way to find answers, and the deck of tarot cards is a perfect tool as a random stimulus. Perfect tool. So whoever thought of this was a genius in the beginning, because they saw a way of, they knew you had to break your question apart into sections. That's nothing new. Great minds in the past have done that anyway. But then putting random tarot cards for ideas in there and it's an idea that stuck, and we're still doing it today. So I hope you like this, and I hope it throws some clarity on the cards. I want you to know that when you understand what you're doing with the cards, it puts a lot more clarity on. So this makes sense now. What I'm learning here, the card spread makes sense, or meanings of cards can be identified in ways that make sense now, and it all starts to connect together. And before we didn't have that. So I hope you like this, and thanks for listening.
Thank you, Vince. And we have plenty of time for questions because Vince finished a little early. So just raise your hand if you do have a question, and I'll bring you the microphone.
So what it sounds like is that really the trick to the tarot is the intuition. Do you even need the tarot cards themselves in order to do a reading?
No, you're right. You don't need them.
Okay.
Linda, my life partner over there, she started with me, started in '93. She used to use playing cards. There you go. She could read better. She's a better reader than I am. Try being married to a psychic for 23 years and see how you get along with it. What are you thinking? I'm just watching. When she tells me, I just look at the wall. I just stare at the wall. I don't have to worry about it. I'm not thinking of nothing. She used playing cards. Playing cards don't have any symbols on them. And now she doesn't use any cards. She says, I don't even need the cards. If you want, I'll throw cards out. She'll tell you as a client, if you want, I'll throw cards down for you. But no, they're not needed. If you could find ways to stir your imagination and your intuition without the cards help you do it. But they're just one way of doing it, yes. You're right, you don't need them.
This might be, similar to his question, but why would you limit yourself to just 78 cards when, as you said, you have these other creative people who will take anything? Why did anyone get started with the cards in the first place?
I think originally they were thinking that was the only way you had to have those cards. I'm going to get my cards. I think people were thinking you had to have them in your hand. Originally, these were looked at as something physically and magical, and now we know better, I think. Well, no, I do, anyway. So, yeah, originally, I think that was just what they implied. We know more today than we did then. But I think the mindset is so strong that this is a magical deck of cards that really that's what it is, it's a mindset. And originally, that was their thinking then. I don't know why they thought it then, but that's about all I can really say about that. Yeah, it's changing, though. It's changing. So if that's what their thinking was back then, why they used tarot cards, why just 78 cards instead of everything in the world around them? It was a system that they implied had magic. A deck of cards, again, the tactic looks like it's a strong illusion. There's magic in these cards. No, that's like building a house and saying the Stanley tool hammer is better than the Ace Hardware tool hammer. I'll have a better house if I use the Stanley tool hammer than the Ace Hardware tool hammer. It's just a tool. This is just a tool. But they looked at it as something magical, something more than it really was. Is that right? Yeah.
But the tool has to be of good quality, because that makes a big difference. Because you can take
Yeah.
a hammer and you can hammer nails, and if it's got the wrong leverage on it, you might have a lot of trouble. But if you have a tool that swings properly, you can get it in. It's no different than, let's say, a sword and a really fine crafted samurai sword.
Yeah, one tool might be better than another, but I think you could build a house with Ace Hardware tools, and you could build a house with Stanley tools. I don't know if the house would be any better if you use Stanley tools, even though they're better tools. At least I think so. And I don't know that much about it. I'm not a handyman. But I would say that you got a point. But samurai sword is a lot sharper. And maybe it's easier to swing around, but they both do the same job. One just does it a little bit better than the other, you know. That's.
Thank you. I have two questions.
Okay.
The first one is about the question. When you come and somebody has a question, how narrow does it have to be or broad, or what questions work or don't work? That's the first question. Then my second question is this more of a prediction that this is going to happen based upon what we're seeing in creative thinking, or is it by going through this process you're planting seeds that then become reality? So you kind of made it happen from the creative thinking process.
Well, to answer your second question first, I would say that usually somebody's trying to accomplish something, and I think that the prediction is a choice. In other words, I'm saying if you do this, what I'm predicting is you'll be okay. You'll be fine. An example is, let's say, a job interview. If you don't go to this job interview today, call up and cancel tomorrow's interview because tell them you got something you have to do, but you'll be there the next day, which doesn't make any sense. But let's just say that's what I told you. I'm telling you, you have a better chance of succeeding if you do that. So it's just me telling you that that's what I'm seeing as your best chance to accomplish what you're doing. I don't believe in fate. I don't say you're going to get a job. If you don't want that job, you're not going to get it. That's my thing. And I don't believe people have their destiny cut out for them. And your second question, your first question again was what again?
About the question, is it narrow?
Oh, yeah, right.
What kind of question?
Right. The more specific the question is, the more specific the answer can be. So if somebody has a specific question, yeah, I'll give them a specific answer. If somebody has a question like, what's my purpose in life? Don't worry, be happy. It's going to be a vague direction. But if they want to know if they're going to sell their house by September, that's a direct question. Or should I start? I own a funeral home, and I want to. I want to own a funeral home. He coughed when I said that. I want to open up a second one in the next neighborhood. Should I do that? That's a legitimate question. And that just came to my mind because that was a question I had once recently. But that's a specific question which can get a specific answer. So the more specific the question is, the more specific the answers can be, in my thinking, the way I read anyway. Yeah. And everybody, like I said, everybody reads differently. I know some great readers, friends of ours, and everybody reads differently. So that's what I do.
The tarot often uses archetypes to act as that stimulus. And one of the things that I found a little surprising tonight is how you use time in your reading, the when, which I think is often difficult if you're reading maybe some of the traditional tarot book reading, the explanations for what the cards are. Could you talk a little bit about how you use time in your readings?
That's a good question because that's usually what people ask a lot. Number 8 position on my Celtic cross is time. And I have people I know, the friends of mine here that have asked me that. What do you know? Narrow me in on that with the time thing. I don't look at time really as dates. For the most part. I just look at when to act. Is now a good time or should we wait? And if it's a wait, then it becomes intuitive on how long to wait. I don't look at dates as saying, well, for the most part, as a general rule, I don't look at it and say, well, I see the 21st of next month, or I see something specific like that. So I don't see time that way. I just see, as far as actions being taken, when is the time to act? And I think that that's important lots of times with a reading. And I think that's all you really need to know. How long will it take to get it done? That's a legitimate question with time. And a lot of people want to know that from number 8. They say, well, the time, how long is this going to take to happen? And that won't be answered in position 8. That would be answered by maybe a combination of all the cards looked at together with different intuitive feelings of what I'm getting. It would just be a very intuitive insight to that. I might see the Chariot card in the 6th position, and that's number 7 of the major arcana. So I say, well, the 7th month of the year. It might be something like that comes to me. I might see the moon card somewhere, and I think, well, by the next full moon, next 30 days. So it becomes very intuitive. But number 8 position with me is just, do we act now, or do we wait? And lots of times that's very useful information to somebody. And as far as the archetypes go, that's Carl Jung, and I love it. I got Jung and the Tarot by Sally Nichols. It's a great book on that. I don't use, really, the archetypes. But there's a lot there as far as studying with the symbolism of the cards and in relation to that, yeah. So it's good stuff. I hope that answers them.
When you said you use the 1 and 2 position to look at the question itself,
On my Celtic cross, yes.
yeah, could you expand on what you mean by that? Like, how would you look at a question? How do you use those 2 cards to pick it apart?
Lots of times people have they have a question. They think they know their question, and you could talk with them and go deeper and find out that their question, there's something underlying even that it's a lot deeper than what they're asking. Those 2 cards, the 2 cards there, I think is important because that's what we're looking at is the actual question. If I see cards there that seem deceptive or vague in some way, it helps me think, are they really seeing things correctly? Are they really seeing this question the right way? So it just helps me do that. I would say that that's how I look at those 2 positions. You can look at them any way you need to for that particular reading, whatever that reading happens to be. But I like to look at numbers 1 and 2 to really study and look into the question, because this helps you understand where this person's coming. You're looking at their question and you're questioning their question because of those 2 cards. And any way that comes up to you from what those 2 cards are is good. Even if you're wrong, you're just checking it out. Saying, why, are you seeing things right here? You think you're seeing things okay? Well, what about this? Is this what's really happening? People might say, I want to get a different job. Or will I get a raise, let's say. And you say, why do you want a raise? Well, I want to be happier at my job. And if I'm making more money, I'll be happier. Well, really, are you going to be happier at your job if you're making more money? Some people think they will. They will for a couple of weeks, and then it's going to be the same old job again. So people lots of times don't really know what the real question is. Maybe you look at them and say, okay, maybe you should look about another career. Maybe not a raise. That helps those 2 cards. And number 7, how they're seeing their own question. Use the pointer. 7. It's the numbers 1 and 2. That helps me to see that they're on the same page with their own question. Hope that answers something. Oh, I'd like to answer one question before I even hear it. So I'm going to answer this one. Good. People will say to me, Vince, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but I've seen the reading where the perfect cards come up in that reading, and it all came true and happened. Perfect cards came up. How do you explain that? And I can't explain that. Any tarot card laid into any position in the card spread can give you good ideas. So they all seem like the perfect card. And if you get an insight from it, and it came true, it looks like those cards were the most perfect cards to come up. They all work. They all give you ideas. So that's why. So go ahead. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to say that.
Since your cards are already in your hand, do you mind giving us a live demonstration?
Well, I could do it up here, but I can't throw cards up there. I could tell you what I could do. Here's what I would rather do than that. I will do something on the table here. But back to what I was talking about with the strategy. Anybody here ever heard of the three-card spread? A lot of you probably heard of the three-card spread. It's the most basic spread there is, past, present, and future. Nobody questions past, present, and future three-card spread. Why do we do three-card spread? Why do we just use past, present, and future? Because we've been told that that's what it is. But this is positions of a question. So instead of past, present, and future, we could change this. If I want to open up a coffee house, or if I want to do something like this, past, present, and future doesn't help me too much. So I said, well, don't use that spread then. Use a different spread. Well, you could change that to past, present, and future to something else. Why don't you change it to strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities? That's a lot more meaningful than past, present, and future, wouldn't it be? Or how about positive aspects, negative aspects, and conclusions? Nobody's going to arrest you if you do that. So, but past, present, and future, yeah, I could take the cards. What I would do, shuffle them up, and then that's a good way to practice the cards. Because as you're laying cards down, I throw over an instruction card. Yeah, right. Six of Cups, overcoming obstacles, new paths with the Page of Wands, allows me to take action with the Knight of Wands. Those three cards right now, I just made a statement with three cards. That's a good way to practice, because you could start talking as you're laying cards over, and that's what I call reading fluently. Instead of saying, well, this is past, this is present, and this is future, well, I just want to make a sentence. I want to make a statement of some type of meaning here. Overcoming the obstacles I've overcome in the past is allowing me right now to look at different options in the present with new paths to go on, allowing me to take actions in the future I see that will work out very well. Patience and understanding with the Queen of Wands, putting me in a very good position right now with a lot of inspiration with the Temperance card. I'm going to learn a lot from this situation with the King of Wands. It's a good way to practice. Just start practicing talking and throwing over the cards as you're. And this is why key words instead of 3 or 4 sentence definition meanings work better. Because it allows you to see the card through your eyes, and it allows it to fit in well with other cards as you're putting things together to try to come up with some type of strategy or meaning that's going to be useful for a client. It works. I hope that worked as a demonstration for you. Okay.
So when you've got your layout, do you ever find yourself in a position where you may need to put down extra cards for additional inspiration because something isn't completely clear even after looking at your spread?
Yeah. A good way to do that is you could take your spread into a different dimension. What I mean by that is instead of just linear, you could lay cards on top of other cards. So if I was going to do a 3-card spread, putting 3 cards down, and as I'm talking to the person, and we want to go deeper, I could put 3 cards over the top of those first 3 cards, and I can go back and look and see how those cards interact with each other to go a little bit deeper into that question with somebody. So putting it in layers, by layering on top of the other cards, helps a lot. Instead of picking up the cards and putting down new cards, I like to lay them on top of the old ones. And I can look back, well, what was underneath there again? Oh, the 6 of Wands with the King of Swords. Okay, yeah, okay. Well, before I just had the six of Wands. this allows me to put some depth into it by going deeper, like you're saying. I think that's what I do, and it works out well. So yeah.
So in terms of the symbolism of each card, so I'm still new to this, right? So sometimes I don't know what a card is supposed to mean, but looking at it, it gives me a feel, a vibe, okay, this could be this or that, and I go with that.
Good.
Is that a good strategy, or should I learn what the 78 cards, mean, each and every one of them?
I know professional readers that never read a book on the tarot, and they're just as good as I am, or anybody else I know. If you feel confident that you're getting ideas from those cards without some book, and it's working for you, you're doing very well. And I would use that. I mean, it's good to, actually I would say, buy my book though. No. What I'm saying is that it's good to have that as a base. I like this card's meaning what I say it is, what I think it is. Yeah, I'll read about what this guy says it is, or this woman says it is, but I still like what I'm feeling. So it's like, look at their suggestions as just that, suggestions. But don't let it interfere with what you're doing already. If you might see something you really learn something from it. But if you feel like what you're doing is working better, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Because ultimately, that's what the book is supposed to be trying to get you to do anyway. Get you your own feelings on those cards. So it would be going backwards. I already got feelings for these cards. Now I'll read the book. Well, that's just a confirmation then, or seeing how they disagree with you, or agree with you, and that's fine. But if you got a style and you're comfortable with it, you'll do just fine.
So I assume from how you're talking when you work with your clients that it's a collaborative process where you're asking them to go deeper and look and so forth. But when you gave the little example, it's almost like you could do it without even having another person on the other side. So how much weight does the collaboration in a reading mean to you, or should it?
That's a good point, because a lot of people think you're not supposed to ask the client anything when they're learning the cards. They think, well, I'm just supposed to know what's going on here as I'm laying these cards out. I ask the client a lot of questions. I want to know, what if it's about, let's say you just met somebody. Or let's say you're going, I want to know about my boyfriend. That's a pretty common one. How long have you been going out? Are you guys getting along right now? When was the last time he called? I'll ask questions like that. Are you happy with things? I want to know what you know so I can tell you what you don't know. And I would also say, so collaboration, yes. I think it's important to be able to talk with them. And if people really are serious about finding an answer to something, they'll be more than happy to talk to you about it. And they'll be happy to answer your question. If you have a question for them about that, they'll answer you. I just did a YouTube on last year about how about something like that. I'll ask questions, especially I love a first date, because I think it's a great thing to know. People will say, well, I just met this guy and we went out and I want to know about him. I'll ask, where did he take you? Because that could tell you a lot. If it's, oh, you took me to a show and went to have dinner afterward, that's boring. That's typical, normal kind of guy. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I mean, it's very stable. Sounds like a very stable person, very traditional. Did he open the door for you to pull your chair out? Stuff like this. That's usually that type of a person. Or did he take you to a rock concert? Or did he take you to some computer convention? The different personalities there that will come up showing what kind of date that first date was. Maybe he just wanted to go to your house with a bottle of wine and talk about life. That's a romantic, you know. Or you got the guy who just took you to see the movie and then dinner. That's just, that's the typical, that's the traditional type of person. The one who goes to the rock concert's an adventurous type of person. So it just, you could find things out by hearing about what if you could ask them the questions, it gives you some insight to paint a picture a little bit better of what you're dealing with. So collaboration is very good, yes. And you'll have it.
What do you do if a person has certain questions as to what they should do with their life, and they've been stuck on trying to find an answer for years? I'm asking this in a very general term, but it can deal with specifics as well. And it's on a personal note, it's a very serious problem for me.
Okay. I would say, well, don't you really, you know, something like that, again, that's a very general thing. There could be a lot of reasons why they're stuck. But you might want to ask them, what do you feel is making you stuck? You could almost get like a counselor then and say, what's making you, why do you feel like you're stuck? What is it, your job, your relationship, your career, you're just because you have no interest, or you're depressed? So it's almost like a counseling thing. And you're going to be able to, if you can look for certain questions to ask that you think might help unstuck the person, that's about all you can really do. I can't really tell somebody what their pursuits of happiness should be. I can help guide them on trying to find their own, but you have to keep it general that way. And I could only tell a person like that, just follow your heart. As long as you're not hurting anybody else, do what you want to do. And if something's holding you back from doing that, we have to find a way to get around that so it's not holding you back anymore. And that's about probably all I would really say. Except for you owe me $50. I hope that helps some way. You don't owe me.
Thank you. Have you ever found yourself in the situation where you see something is really terrible going on in the person's life, and that's exactly what your intuition tells you? If so, would you use a protective language?
Protective?
Or you wouldn't just tell it as it is, or you would tell it as it is? It's kind of a moral question.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, here's what I feel. If it's something that's going to affect other people, I don't want to do that based on an intuitive thing. Is my husband cheating on me? I'm not going to say that your husband's cheating on you. I'll have Rocky waiting by my car some night, going to want to punch me in the nose. You know, I don't. And I'm not going to do that on the turn of a card anyway. I might say, you and your husband obviously are having trouble. You need to talk this over. I see him being unhappy because you're not happy. So you two are unhappy. I see you need to talk here and find out what's going on.
I'm thinking more about health problems.
Health?
Potential health problems.
Health, there you go. Talk to them like they're a family member. I'm not going to give a diagnosis based on a tarot card. I'll ask them, you're seeing your doctor? What does your doctor say? And if they don't like what their doctor's saying, I'll say you should get a second opinion. But I won't say that their doctor is wrong. Or you don't worry about getting that test because the doctor doesn't know what he's talking about. No, you can get in trouble for that. If it's a health issue, if somebody's concerned about their health, I would just say, I would focus on the doctor and say, are you confident with this doctor you have? And that's the best you can do for them. You know, But yeah, that's a good question too, because those are issues people got. I just had a test. I'm waiting for the results to come back. It's going 3 days. I want to know now, what do you see? And I get them, and I tell them, well, how does your doctor feel about this? And he says, well, he thinks it's going to be okay. Well, I said, well, it's probably going to be okay. It's like you're talking to somebody who's a family member. Just make them feel better. And there's really nothing more you can do about it. I wouldn't try to go there with intuition.
Vince, can I just ask, if you are using the cards to answer a question like that, is it possible that, a spread of cards, and I know nothing about this, but certain cards probably are normally regarded as not good. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if you got somebody comes with a question like that, and then you got this spread of cards, and you see that, I mean, what would your intuition, what would you do?
Like if the death card came up?
Yeah.
And it's on health? Well, usually what I'll try to do is talk with them about what they feel their condition is. And if let's say the devil card comes up, you could look at that as, it's a negative thing that's in their environment. You could also look at it as you're seeing things in a negative way. Or you're afraid to go to the doctor, you're afraid of the test results you might get. I try to keep it all on positive note. I won't, as far as giving them hope on what they should do. I don't look at negative cards and saying, this doesn't look good for your health. But I will say that I see you need to go to the doctor, make sure you're up on things, but I won't go there, no. Because for one thing, if you're wrong, you see a bunch of negative cards come up, the Tower, the Devil, this Death card come up, and you say, well, geez, your health doesn't look good. You got waiting for a test results. I don't like this at all. Well, maybe they got 3 days before their test results come back. Now there'll be 3 days of anxiety because of what I told them, and the test results come back, they're fine. They're going to look at, what'd you do? You put me through all this hell for nothing. The doctor says I'm okay. You tell me I got all this gloom and doom. No, I won't do that. No, it's not good. I'm not going to try to be a doctor. So, the tarot cards will tell you a lot, but there's other things I think you're better off leaving at. I will tell you here's what I've done. I have done where I've seen intuition, where I've touched a little bit there. Rider-Waite deck, the Queen of Wands. She's holding a staff in one hand, and in the other hand she has a flower, a big flower. And I forgot what hands they are. But a woman asked me about her mother. She said, my mother's health. How's my mother's health? And I did see intuitively, and this just came out intuitively. And like I said, these things will happen because you're using that side of the mind. So let's say the staff was in the right hand and the flower was in the left. And I said to her, she said, how's my mother's health? And I looked and I said, was it breast cancer? Is it breast cancer? And she said, yes. I said, was the left breast removed? And she said, yes. And I said, the right one is well in hand, because she had that staff. So she'll be okay. But I said, obviously, keep in touch with your doctor, too. That was intuitive. Now, that card doesn't mean breast cancer is okay, bad for the left breast. It's just the way I saw that card at the time from that question. And it worked. So those things can come up, yes.
We've got plenty of time tonight.
This is all new to me. I'm a novice, so I have lots of questions. So this question is for you. Since this seems to be more of a process and dissecting and imagination and intuition and all that tied together to think through everything, because you do it so often and you use this tool in the process, does it become second nature and that's the way your brain thinks in your own life with everything? And do you find that your clients, if they come frequently, they can start to do it almost on their own by deploying some of these same things just in their day-to-day thinking.
I don't have any clients that, after a while, I have a lot of clients. I have clients I've read for 20 years, same client. And none of them, I've read enough where they say, you know, I could do this. I could, if I'm answer my own questions, I know what you're doing. And no, they just assume, they want to talk with me, just like we always have. And so I think that, you know, that as far as that goes, no, they always want to still hear what I got to say. As far as does it affect my thinking? Because you're right, my head's in the clouds a lot with this. So do I come back to earth? You know, and fortunately for me, I'm down to earth type of person, anyway. So I'm pretty grounded, but I can get up there with this, and but I got friends. We got friends that read, and friends of ours, they never touch the ground, some of these people. But they're wonderful friends, and they have a wonderful imagination, and it's just the way they are. So with me personally, I'm able to read and shut it off afterwards. And I'm also able to get in there when I want to. And lots of times it's just by myself. I like to spend a lot of time by myself thinking things. Not a lot of time, but I mean, there's a part of the day I like to do that, where I let that part of my mind just go. But, so everybody's different on that. I think that it's good that we realize that we live in the physical world, and you got to live it. You got to remember that that's there too. And, you know, it's good to keep that in mind, you know, and have a balance between the two. And I think most people can do that just fine. I don't see any danger in learning these cards, no. So, hope that answers something.
So we'll all be grounded and allow our intuition to flow. Thank you so much, Vince.
Thank you. Thank you.
As Vince did mention, he is teaching I think it's 6 weeks, is that correct?
6 weeks, yes.
6-week class that starts on Tuesday evening.
Yes.
So this coming Tuesday is the first of the 6 classes. And if you are interested to sign up for that or join the class, you can still register. You'll find it in our program catalog, but just go to our website and look under classes and groups. And in there you'll see that it's one of the classes that they are listed by the day of the week. So just go to Tuesday and you'll see that it's there. And I'm sure it'll be very informative. If you found this night's presentation, then you can really go in much more deeply. Also, Vince has been kind enough to bring some of his books and his deck of cards, and I think a few other things there. So please do have a look and maybe purchase some of those. I'm sure he'll be happy to autograph them for you. And but just before you do that, I want to mention that Saturday we have 2 workshops. The first one is in the morning. It starts at 10:30. That is with Jessica Amarosa, and she's going to do an introduction to Thai body work for self-care, where she teaches you how to use Thai massage on yourself. You do the massage, or various ways in which you can help release stress, tension, aches, pains in the body through these various pressure points and ways of applying them. So that's from 10:30 a.m. to 12. If you'd like to join that class, please go to our website and register. Then in the afternoon, we have our Spirit Circle drumming with Karen. She's going to be leading that. She does these drumming circles for us on a somewhat regular basis Always very enjoyable, lots of fun. Bring your drums, rattles, or anything else that you have. That is between 2 and 4 p.m. Thursday next week, we will have Santi Karo. He's an ex-Buddhist monk. He was a Buddhist monk in Thailand for a very long time. And he teaches here on a quite a regular basis, at least 2 or 3 times a year. He comes down from his meditation center, which is way up in Wisconsin, and he's going to give a talk on the Buddhist perspectives for living, the Buddhist perspective for times of anxiety and conflict, and most appropriate, this is a time of anxiety and conflict for most people, so everybody should come to this talk. And Santikara is very well versed in the Buddhist scriptures and, of course, practice. So he is also going to be leading a weekend meditation retreat. That is from Friday next week through to Sunday. More geared for people who already have a pretty good meditation, regular meditation practice. I would not recommend it for somebody who just, I think I'll go to start meditate. It's pretty, the schedule is a little too much for people who are just starting, but it is for quite a good opportunity for people who want to deepen their meditation practice, and he is a very good teacher. So, thank you all for coming this evening. Please stay and have some refreshments. And of course, go visit Vince and look at his books and decks of cards there. Thank you all.